Gadge, it's been a very long time since we both sat at this table and did an episode together.
Well, we're allowed to do it now, aren't we?
Well, we can do it now. Welcome back to AATV. I'm your host, Tom Anvil Hibberd, here with my historical consultant, Gareth Gadge Harvey. He hates it when I say that. And we're going to talk today all about British Infantry Helmets. And the goal of this episode really is to equip you with the knowledge to choose the right helmet for the era that your loadout is based on. So we're going to go all the way from World War I nearly up to the present day and talk about the whys and the wheres and the hows of these helmets, Gadge.
Yeah, and again, to reinforce Tom, I'm not an expert, I just collect these things. I know a little bit, but not a great amount. I'm not the Imperial War Museum, so if there's something wrong with what we say, be constructive, tell us, dead cool, right? Yeah, just go, no, I think you're wrong, because I don't mind, right? But please just be nice about it.
Okay, so as ever with any of these loadout videos, we are doing this from an airsoft skirmishing perspective, not from living history or reenactment. I'm sure, as Gadge says, we'll probably make some mistakes, but bear in mind the things that we're saying are to equip the viewer with the knowledge needed to go out and get the right helmet for them. If you want to see a more comprehensive coverage, you found a fantastic website.
blogspot.combathelmets.com, amazing, learnt loads from that myself.
That's brilliant. And also if you want to see videos, Rifleman Moore's YouTube channel goes into great detail. He'll spend as much time on one helmet as we will covering 80 years worth ourselves.
Yeah. When we talk about those medieval ideas of knights, they stopped using all that armour really when you get to gunpowder weapons. Crossbow bolts to a bit, but also mainly musket balls punching through armour. People aren't having as much hand-to-hand with overhead blows raining down on them. It's an unnecessary weight. If you fast forward though to World War I, when people are in trenches, all those blows are coming from overhead.
So when you say blows...
Well, it's usually fragments from shells, bits of fence post or house that have been knocked flying, sub-velocity fragments as we call them.
Bits of your own trench.
Yeah, bits of rock, etc. And a lot of guys were getting head injuries. And they decided around about 1915 that steel helmets would be a good idea. Now, the Germans were already wearing helmets, but they weren't steel helmets, they were decorative helmets like the pickle helmet.
Oh, were they like...
They're like a leather type of helmet.
I always thought they were.
No, they're not metal.
Oh, okay.
So originally they decided, it's all coming from above, what do we need? Something that protects your eyes, your ears, the back of your neck. Put a bowl on top of someone's head, a bit like those medieval helmets that deflected the blow coming down on your head, away from you. And what you got was called the Brodie helmet. Now the Brodie helmet, we haven't got one of those, they're incredibly expensive, and I don't do World War I airsoft or live in history, so I've got no real need to own one. But safe to say, around about 1940, the Brodie is superseded by a very, very similar model called the Mark II, and we do have a Mark II.
Okay. Now, is this a Mark?
That's a Mark II. It's a very early Mark II. That was made in 1938.
So if we go back to your medieval analogy, Gadge, this looks a lot like what would be called a kettle helmet or a pot helmet. It's the same, very, very similar shape, kind of munitions grade.
Yeah.
Steel helmet.
I think it's some sort of like treated steel, isn't it? It's not normal mild steel. You're looking at.
Well, we're not
even going to go into that.
We're not metallurgists, so it's just yeah. Okay.
So we're looking here at what we call a Super Bowl style helmet, and as you can see, it makes all those blows rain off. It's not designed to stop bullets going straight onto it.
So I think that's
a fragment helmet.
I think that's an important thing. Most helmets aren't designed to stop, right? Certainly rifle rounds, and even at this stage, pistol rounds. They might be able to deflect.
I can think of only one steel helmet I know of this type that will deflect small arms rounds, and that's the East German M56.
Okay.
Anyway, don't digress. So these steel helmets here, very much like the Brodie, but they change the suspension. So you have to imagine here what this should look like, because these always get a little bit decayed and corroded. So this is dried out. You have a sorbo pad, which would be very spongy originally, and this fibre rim to hold it all in place, the cloth sweatband, and there would be an oilcloth liner inside there. And I will show you later on a repro of the oilcloth liner, so you can imagine it.
I was going to ask, can you get repro liners?
You can get repro liners because these actually suffer quite badly. The shells are fairly hardy, as you'd expect. The liners, the sorbo dries out, it shrinks, the fibre cracks through movement, and these sprung chin straps, I mean, it's a great idea, but engineering wise, to mass produce, it's not the simplest thing in the world.
So there's actually two independent coil springs sewn inside this fabric section here.
And then you've got an adjustable non-elasticated webbing strap.
Quite remarkable.
So you've got a buckle system there, and you've got springs. So that's a lot of work really, but the Mark II is used for absolutely years, and it's used for the whole Dunkirk operation, the Desert War, etc. And then the British Army's Medical Research Council realised that you could actually have a lot less casualties if we changed the design. Thing is, what do you change it to?
Yep.
So they had a look at what everybody else was using, and you've got 3 options here.
Okay, so we've got 3 options. Yeah. Okay, so this...
Option 1, the Germans.
The Germans are coming.
Now, again, this is a positively medieval style of helmet design.
Looks like a sallet to me.
It does, and it's similar. This is a German reproduction, because I couldn't afford a real one. This is a reproduction of a German World War II mid-war steel helmet. Design-wise, it's not a million miles away from the First World War design. It's a little bit less pronounced.
Yep.
You've got these little ventilation holes, but the main features are that you've got this protection around the ears and the lower and the temple. Back of the neck still flares out, and this little lip at the front is pretty much like the Mark III's lip. It keeps stuff off your nose, your eyes, etc.
Bit of sunshade as well, and just, yeah.
You've got these air vents, and the suspension is quite clever because it's essentially a leather cap that you can drawstring it in to adjust it to whatever size you need it to be. The chin strap is rudimentary. It's a simple leather chin strap. It's not going to win any awards, but I guess you could make more of those than you could sprung ones.
Yes.
Now that's a great helmet design. It's so good that several modern nylon fibre helmets pretty much copy it, like the PAS GT type helmet. However, if you're in a war, you don't want to be wearing the helmet of your enemy. Not only is it really, really bad for friend-foe object recognition, but it's also admitting to the other side that they've got a better design than you. So they had to come up with something better.
And this is undoubtedly a better helmet.
Oh, it's probably the best helmet of World War II, I'd say. So the options they're left with are the Russian SSH-40 or M40 type helmet, which most of the Warsaw Pact used up until the 80s and a little bit further on, and we showed this in our previous Afghan war loadouts thing. This has a very similar liner. You're looking at that leather cap
with the drawstring,
and a rigid chin strap. Again, these could be leather, they could be strap, but that's an option. Again, you know, but our biggest allies in World War II were the Americans. So the Americans had the, again, this is a very good designer helmet, so much so that most of the world used this. The Americans went with a different option.
It's pretty much turned into like the NATO standard helmet.
Yeah, very much. So you've got the steel shell, which is very similar to the Soviet design. Kind of similar to the German one, it dips down across the ears. It's got that little lip. This Belgian example is quite dented. And then you have a completely separate liner. Now this is a post-war Belgian liner. World War II ones were like kind of less fibre.
Would they ever wear these on their own?
Yes. The idea behind it is that for parades, guard duty, anything where you want to look soldierly but you don't need the weight of a steel helmet, it can be worn on its own. Hence, you'll see that there's actually a Belgian national flag on the side of that. The liner for this, again, you've got that string to tighten it up, but it's a little bit more breathable rather than having the full cap.
Well, this is all very medieval. If you look at medieval helmet suspension systems,
really
we've really not moved on at all.
No one's reinventing the wheel here, are they, at all? No. And it's got its own chin strap on that, and you've got a chin strap on the actual shell.
Yeah.
So they were the options. Now, the problem we had in the Commonwealth Forces is that the headphones we had for our radio systems don't fit under any of those helmets. So we came up with our own design in 1943-ish, with the MRC Council again, which was the Mark III helmet. Now this is streets ahead from the previous designs. These are called turtle helmets, they're called D-Day helmets, they're called assault helmets. The official name is the Mark III. So the key features are, as you can see, we're getting that ear and back of neck protection much deeper. If we put them, you can see it's much deeper down. You're retaining that bolted on liner, and the liner is not that different from the Mark II. In fact, it's pretty much identical. And in this reproduction line, you can see the oilskin cap that was on about earlier that usually decays in a vintage example. So because I use this for reenactment sometimes, I actually want that cap liner there. It's not the best repro, but it does the job. The sorbitane on that again is actually a bit springy.
And it changed the straps to a...
The strap is a pure elasticated chin strap.
Right, so the whole thing's just elastic.
One piece of elasticated webbing, so you're not making 1, 2, 3, 4 springs, several metal fittings. That is literally one piece that's adjusted by just pulling that bail.
And they've also riveted it straight in. So there's less fittings and bits and bobs and everything else. So
essentially, we are looking at a helmet that's got the same protection from above as the Mark II. If you look at the actual, if you put them side by side, it's not that different.
No.
Right, but you've got that depth. Weren't enough of these to go around by D-Day, so you'll see a mix from 1944 onwards of Mark IIs and Mark IIIs. Now there are war diary accounts of guys arriving with their Mark IIs in Normandy after the initial invasion.
So they've actually done the landing.
Yeah, done the landing. They'd arrive wearing that, and they'd be handed one of these, a cam net, and a load of scrim on the day. Because one of the things they'd also learned from the Germans, from captured German prisoners, they said British helmets shine. I mean, look at that. I don't know if that's the original paint job, and that's how I got it. So I don't want to change it.
But it's nicely representative of a shiny helmet, isn't it?
It's a big round silhouette, and it shines. It's really visible when they're moving through foliage, etc. So from 44 onwards, you start to see a lot more scrimmed infantry helmets. You see a little bit of it earlier on. Yeah. You see a bit of it in Italy, but it's actually kind of doctrine pretty much by D-Day and onwards.
Yes, it might be an individual unit thing, but by D-Day onwards, it's actually more of an official.
So for the World War II Airsofter, we're saying either of these is really good. If you want to be historically accurate, if it's pre-D-Day, you really want one of those. If you're going for the more common Normandy onwards games, either one will work. You're not going to look wrong. You tend to find Canadian units had quite a lot of these. Certain regiments had more of these than those, and vice versa. So if you want to be a purist, you can go and look at pictures of that regiment in that battle.
So these are not cheap.
No, not at all.
Right, so now this shell Gadge, if I remember rightly, talking about the Mark III.
In our Falklands video,
In our Falklands, but this shell lasts for decades.
Mid-80s.
40 years, 50 years?
Up to the mid-80s.
Okay, so let's move on to one of those.
Okay.
Are you looking to start a riot, Gadge?
Thankfully not. But as the British Army persevered on through the 50s, 60s and 70s and got involved in Northern Ireland, they found themselves in internal security with infantry units and not really having a suitable helmet for it. So a quick fix was to modify the Mark III, or the Mark IV as it was at this point.
Okay, so what's the difference between the 3 and the 4?
It's all a bit nebulous, right? So I'm no expert, so let's just go quickly through it. So the Mark III had that bolt-on liner and the Mark II style helmet liner inside it.
Okay.
The Mark IV has this lift the dot fastener, which is a faster way of getting the liner in and out, so you could use your helmet as a wash bowl or whatever you need to do.
So I could effectively press this thing in the middle and take the whole liner out.
Yeah, but the liner itself would be fairly like the Mark III one in being a fibre rim, sorbo pad, etc.
Okay, but you could,
The Mark V, they improved the liner to have this sweat-absorbing sock-type covering. Some people hated this and cut it out. There's a lot more foam in them as well, so it's an improved liner.
Yeah.
And also to soldier-proof it, you see that like when it says pull front, they've actually labelled what's the front and stuff on it, so that it's absolutely idiot-proof. As this is a riot version, the chin strap changes. So this is very front-heavy. And the last thing you want in a riot is your helmet falling over your face so you can't see a thing, and that's actually protecting your chin rather than your eyes or whatever. They've now got a nape strap on the back to support the weight of the helmet and pull it backwards on your head. This helmet, as we said, this is a 70s example. It's got this Mark V type liner, quite collectible in its own right, and you can see that because it's used for internal security, it's not been treated in any way to be. It's still a bit shiny, really, if you look at it. It's a dull paint, but there's still a shine on it. There's no net.
Now, so we're going to move on to the helmet you've seen in our Falklands video, or our early 80s infantry video.
Yeah. So this is pretty much the same as that riot helmet we were looking at. The liner, as you can see, is that red cardboard fibre type lift the dot liner.
Yep.
Again, with the front written on it to help the harder thinking. And it's an elasticated chin strap. It's got a slightly different, comfier version of that sock on. But because this is used for battle, you can see it's actually been concealed. So because it's designed to be used for battle, it's got more camouflage on it.
Yeah.
Now, there's no, that I know of, issued helmet cover. Bear in mind, the Germans were issuing helmet covers from the 30s, the Americans from the sort of 50s and 60s. Actually, World War II, they had helmet covers, the Americans. And we've always gone with a net.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with the net is if you don't massively scrim your helmet, you still see that shine coming through. Now, you can paint your helmet with textured paint to reduce some of that shine.
Through the net itself.
Yeah, but most guys would put a sandbag over it first, just to take all that shine off, dull it down, add a bit of contrast.
Yep.
And then again, it'd be personal preference, but the net is then added. Bits of torn up shirt, bits of vehicle cam net, bits of sandbag, whatever worked for you. You see some that look like absolute Wookiees, you see some that are hardly touched.
Yep.
And that will persist on till the mid-80s, when there's a big period of change for the British Army, as we mentioned in our previous video. Boots change, helmets change, rifles change.
But fundamentally, I know there's some suspension and liner changes to this. But fundamentally, this shell goes back to about 1943, 1944.
It does. I mean, it's a 1943 design that came to service in 1944. But if you go back far enough, actually, in the way it's designed to protect you, the shape of it, it's positively medieval.
Yep. Right, we just finished filming, and we were a little bit hesitant about talking about Mark IVs and Mark Vs.
Again, it's an airsoft overview, and because I'm not that fussed usually as a sort of airsoft, exactly what the difference is, but I've always been curious as what makes it a 4 or a 5, and I thought it was the liner, but...
Right, so I've just done a bit of Googling, and I found a great discussion on a forum about what makes the difference between a Mark IV and a Mark V. It turns out, certainly, there was no general service Mark V helmet. There may well have been a prototype or something went into trials that was given the designation of Mark V Gadge.
But on the stores...
But in stores, it doesn't exist. That's why we went from Mark IV to a Mark VI without a Mark V. However, in even more detail, it turns out, actually, if you were in stores, you couldn't actually order a whole complete Mark IV helmet.
Not a single unit. You couldn't just go, I need 15 new Mark IVs.
No, you had to order what they called the body.
Yeah. And
this remained a Mark IV body.
And we found out that lifter dot is like about late 40s, something like that.
Yep. You could order a spider, a headband, a strap, everything, the whole helmet you've got here, everything in there.
That whole complete unit is actually lots of different stores codes.
Lots of different stores codes. This is a Mark V liner and spider, but they always put it in a Mark IV body or shell. So there you go.
Makes loads of sense. I consider myself educated.
Things really didn't change that much until
around 1985, 86.
Okay, let's get that one out. So this was actually pretty fundamentally huge change, especially in the material that it's constructed from.
So we go from steel, or sort of like military grade manganese steel types, we go to a ballistic nylon, or let's call it Kevlar for the sake of argument. I know Kevlar's a trademark name, but everyone calls it a Kevlar helmet.
Yep.
And the padding is better. I mean, that liner inside, there's a suspension which isn't a million miles away from the previous suspension we've shown. It's still using a drawstring loop to tighten in straps or a cap. But you've actually got integral foam rubber and leather padded pads.
Yeah, mine are completely...
They harden up over time.
This is like from 1987. This one is completely solid now.
Yeah. I always found that they ran on the small size, so I've got quite a big head. I actually wore an extra large because they just looked ridiculous and I couldn't do anything with them otherwise. And they're not that comfortable.
No, they're not.
So you quite often find that with that drawstring loop, because you've got to put a knot in it, at some point that knot starts digging in your head, especially over a period of time, chin strap on tight. So a lot of guys have put like an old bit of cloth in there, or a bit of vehicle, or sort of car washing sponge, just something to pad out a little bit. Now the other big change is that rather than expecting you to use a cam net and add on scrim, etc., because you can't decontaminate scrim, and when this was designed we were fully expecting to fight a big shooting war with the Russians. Everyone was going to bombard each other with thickened blood and sarin and all sorts of horrible nonsense. What you can do though is you can remove these chin straps, you can take this liner off, and you can decontaminate it easier than you can with scrim. You can just give someone a new helmet cover. You can also then attach local foliage which you can change as you move. So if we're patrolling through some big high grasslands, we can bang grass in. We move into a wood that's mainly rhododendrons or whatever and be there for a while. You take your wilted grass out, you move your rhododendrons in. Okay. You adapt your camouflage to your environment.
Rather than having stuff hanging off your helmet, you put stuff onto your helmet depending where you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's a kind of a change in personal cam, and it's a change in the design of how we do things. Again, we've talked about this a little bit in our previous videos.
Yeah.
The Mark VI for me is a great leap forward, but it still had its flaws. So when I used to use these, I found that because it's quite low on the back of the neck, if you were wearing any form of day sack, or especially the issue rocket packs as we call them, when you went prone, what used to happen is you kind of do that a little bit and push it over your eyes.
Come down this way.
Quite often you'd be jamming your SUSAT underneath the lip, so you could get a good sight picture without you push down. So that was a problem. Again, I found they were quite uncomfortable with that suspension, and they did make you sweat really badly. And if you cam creamed your upper face as you really should, you'd end up having extremely oily face, running into your eyes and stinging a bit. Minor embuggerance.
So this is mine. I've got it now. There were loads. Guys had loads of mods. They taped their covers on. They put these rubber. That rubber
pad is because quite often you'll see on that was a massive wear point. So many guys have covers that just literally it's frayed and worn away, and you can see them trying to tape it on and stuff.
Yep.
That literally adds a bit of protection.
The problem with these is, and they came off, they were ordered off effectively, is with fire or IEDs, that
melt on your face.
can be a melt hazard, which obviously in that area is really not what you want.
And again, it's all about theatre though, isn't it? So in a conventional war, being attacked by IEDs and petrol bombs is way less of a risk than it is in Afghanistan or even Northern Ireland.
We talked about that before with like tropical trousers and tropical shirts and things. So yeah, what you wear depends on the theatre.
Interestingly, for a desert camo cover, they're still putting foliage bands on it.
Yeah.
I always wonder what. I imagine just the pattern says it has to be made of this fabric and have these elastics put on it.
This must be theatre. I mean, there are some deserts. Oh, not all deserts are completely sand.
You get green zones, don't you?
And you get green zones and areas with rushes and bits and bobs. But yeah. And you can get a mix of camo covers for these. So I've got a DPM and an MTP one for these.
I've had a UN one in blue before. I've had a winter one in white. And again, these. I mean, I was being issued these in 1999 and 2000 as a reservist. So this is seeing 15 years of service plus in the early Mark 6 versions.
This is my Mark 7, recently purchased. It has a, as you can see, Gadge. I'll show the viewers. It has an
much better suspension.
Infinitely better suspension system.
Still got provision for your comms. Yep. More padding around it.
You can also take one of these out. If you're wearing an earpiece, you can take one out entirely. You can move it up to here.
Cool. And that suspension actually lifts totally off the top of the helmet, and it doesn't have a bit of knotted string.
Well, they could also put there's enough space to get a gel pack or a cool pack underneath. So the troops were issued cool packs.
That's really clever.
So they could take it out of the chiller and then bang it in the top.
So the actual chin strap arrangement doesn't look massively different. It looks a little bit more convenient.
It's a little bit better.
You've got two
and I've got
settings there.
Provision there for normal and
NBC,
I guess an NBC status, rather than having a grenade ring like everyone did.
Yeah. It's a much better solution.
Come right across there, and then if you need it bigger for whatever reason, cold weather or resi or NBC, you can go to that side.
Now, before we look at the actual shape of it, it's worth noting that you've still got this cloth cover, you've still got foliage loops, or bands rather, but this time you have scrim tied to it, which seems to be like almost a hybrid of the Falklands War era scrimming and the modern approach to sticking foliage in.
Well, scrimming is really kind of episodic. It kind of goes in and out of, depending on theatre, it comes in and out of fashion. I think a lot of troops went into the Iraq-Afghan conflicts with no scrim on, and then they pretty much come out with scrim. So the suspension, I do have nape strap on this to take the load. That's because these helmets especially were starting to be used with night vision gear, so you needed a nape strap.
Stop it sliding forwards.
A nape strap here to stop it moving forwards under night vision.
It's interesting that nape is also cut away at the back. You probably can't see with the cover on, but it actually scoops in.
Of course, it's a tan colour because these came in when we were in sandy places, and someone's oversprayed this.
Yeah. So interestingly, you can see that cutaway there, rather than Mark 6 going right the way around. It's been much better peripheral vision and generally not having to jam a suit under it.
Yeah.
The back is a little bit sloped away.
Yeah, it's been cut.
It's been
probably lost about an inch off the back.
Yeah. Again, that probably stops it getting pushed forwards when you're prone and you're trying to get your
a lot of the time, the guys there were carrying patrol packs a lot more.
Yeah.
So they had a lot more in their patrol packs. So patrol packs were bigger. They were carrying more load in their patrol packs. So they needed a relief cut.
And those comms flanges, for want of a better word, out from the side of the helmet, they're much more pronounced. They're almost a little bit like the Mitch type helmets.
Yeah, well, at this point they were using smaller comms systems like Bowman. Now they're starting to use proper active hearing protection, so they needed more space
room
underneath the helmets. So I think that was a massive and significant upgrade to helmets. I've never used one in a sandy place, so if you've got, I know we've got some servicemen watching this, if you've got any comments on any of these helmets, and
we'd love to hear your experiences.
And you're using that, would be fantastic. But yeah, this to me, certainly as an airsoft skirmisher, is a much better helmet than the Mark 6. And it's also lighter. So if you want to.
It's actually, it's not massive, but it's there.
But every little bit on your head is going to count, especially when you've got night vision on. So that really is the end of our journey. This has been superseded by Virtus. That's currently not on the surplus list, I believe, at the moment. So we don't have one. But I shall show you some pictures of it. That's been upgraded again. It's higher cut, it's lighter, it's got more provision for night vision and for attachment rails and everything else. But that's where we are, Gadge, with
Yeah.
infantry helmets.
And again, like I say, we'd love to hear your experience of these. If you've got any really nice nuggets of information that we might have missed, please share them with us. We really like to learn from you guys as much as you like to learn from us.
So I've been Tom Anvil Hibberd, here with Gareth, Gadge, Harvey, talking all about British infantry helmets. As always, you can join our Patreon scheme to help keep this channel as independent as possible, and possibly buy some more helmets to show you. If you want to make a one-off financial contribution, why not try out our Teespring t-shirt store. Most importantly, like, subscribe, ding that bell, share this video with others who think you might find it interesting. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.